Good afternoon, everyone. Very happy to be part of this session. Thanks to the Forge team and the Kumaraguru institutions for the opportunity to share my thoughts on digital transformation. So we had very interesting three sessions in the morning where entrepreneurs took very specific business ideas that they came up with and they shared their ideas. So my session, in a way, will give you the big picture, right? So those were very specific applications of use cases using digital technologies. But let's take a step back. We'll see how different is the expectation from large corporates when it comes to digital transformation. So a few differences are obviously, we'll see it as we go through the slide deck. But I think Rahul spoke about it in the morning, right? Scale is very important for large corporates. When you talk about industrial digital transformation, we cannot just stop with pilots or proof of concepts. You need to think of interoperability. You need to think of standards, because the moment you say large corporates, they'll have multiple facilities, multiple factories that could have grown organically, inorganically. So any solution developed for one factory should be applicable across other factories. In case of manufacturing, you can similarly think of other business units or divisions in case of other industries like banking or healthcare, right? So maintaining those standards, interoperability, keeping it as a generic solution, those are very important for scaling up. And then the people aspect is also very important when you talk about digital transformation in large corporates. So we'll go through those examples. So like I said, it's a step back to look at the big picture, because in the morning, Rahul gave an example from the steel industry. Ganesh gave an example from the defense industry, and Mayur's example was from healthcare industry. So now we will take a step back, look at it very generically. I will also give you very practical examples from automotive industry, from FMCG retail, and from technology industries also. So that's the focus of this session. Okay, so what is digital transformation? You will find several definitions for digital transformation, but very basically, this is one definition I've taken. It is the use of technology to radically improve performance or reach of enterprises. So any other definition you take, the two key messages here are usage of technology and radical improvement. You can call it radical improvement, or you can wordsmith it, you can call bigger business impact or scale, right? So digital technology is used to bring about change in the way businesses are working. So that's broadly digital transformation, because there are other ways to transform enterprises, but here obviously we are talking about usage of digital tools, and there should be a significant change in business performance. So how do you classify digital transformation, right? So here are four broad buckets of looking at digital transformation. The very basic approach is business process transformation, right? A business process, what is a process? A process is a sequence of steps which adds value to a product, it could be to a service. Basically, it adds value to the customer, right? So when you disrupt a business process and bring about change, it's a business process related transformation. So here the key thing is that there is something called lift and shift. This is a terminology used in industry. Some of you might have heard it. I think it's a very good time for students like you and early stage entrepreneur startups to focus on digital transformation, because even before COVID-19, many companies were looking at digital transformation as a key business initiative, either because of competition or because of the opportunity that they saw. So business process transformation is, I would say, the low-hanging fruit. But the key message that you need to keep in mind here is you cannot just copy-paste a manual way of doing things to a digital way of doing it. In that case, you miss a big opportunity. What you should also do is to look at improving key business metrics and to bring out some major change in the way processes are done. So business process is a basic way of digital transformation. The next one is business model transformation. So what is a business model? Basically, it is a way you make money, right? The process is the sequence of steps to add value. Model or business model is how you make money. So today we will see some examples of how business model is transforming businesses. So one example is everything as a service. So in manufacturing, it's called servitization. for those of you from the IT background, cloud, for example, right? Cloud technology gives you infrastructure as a service or platform or even software as a service, right? So I call it, we call it everything or anything as a service. So that's a new business model that is enabled by technologies. Outcome-based business model can also be one where you don't sell a product, you don't sell a service. Let's say you're selling a gas turbine, you say that I will give you, for 50 hertz of alternating current at 240 volts at the last mile at 99% of the time. You would have read in papers, China has started rationing electricity to their homes, right? This was a very surprising news in the last few days. So outcome-based business models is one more way of looking at it. So for those of you who are strong on the finance side, because for this type of digital transformation, you need very strong financial models. I'll give you one practical example where a company has gone for it, a very popular automotive company. So you should be very good in estimating the future cost. What is the current value of those costs? What is going to be the current value of your future cash flows? So financial perspective is very important. And your legal perspective is very important because it is a contract that is going to bind the customer and the end user. So as an entrepreneur, you can provide a business model based transformation, or you can help your clients to undergo a business model transformation. So this is one way of doing it. It's a very popular model. We'll see some examples for it. The third type of digital transformation is what is called domain based transformation, right? So product based transformation falls under this category. A company working in a particular domain may decide to get into an associated area. So that's where domain transformation happens. So some of the speakers in the morning also spoke about it, right? So we say digital transformation and emerging technologies are very important, but it is also very, very important for you to know a particular domain, right? So we call it a T-shaped model. So where the horizontal axis is the breadth of technologies that you learn. It could be cloud, it could be mobility, big data, but then the vertical line in the T is the domain part. So you need to go deep into a particular business, whatever is your passion, whether it is healthcare or manufacturing or finance. Only then you can identify meaningful use cases so that you apply these technologies for appropriate business challenges or business opportunities, right? Otherwise, it can just be an academic exercise. So knowing the domain is very important. Again, I'll give you one example where a company went into a completely new domain because of the challenge it faced, because of the opportunity it saw, and it has become very successful. So domain-based digital transformation is one more. And the last one is culture or organizational digital transformation, which is completely people related. So I'm not discouraging you, but I would say as early career professionals, probably the first three business models could be the first three ways of digital transformation could be most appropriate for you, because the fourth one is where most large corporates struggle because people don't like change, right? Especially if you look at large corporates. I've been a part of many such large digital transformations in corporates like General Electric, where we try to roll out a new product lifecycle management system, but their engineers were so used to doing it on spreadsheets, Word, and other old legacy tools. When we brought in a new web-based tool, the initiative failed several times. So I'll give you some data points also for that. So culture or organizational digital transformation is one more way of looking at it. You need to redefine the incentives that are used for people. For example, a salesperson may be used to selling a product. If you ask him or her to sell as a service type of model, then what will be their performance bonus? So those type of incentives, how do you design the org structure? Will this division be part of the parent unit, or should it be spun off as a separate unit? So that's the people side. So I can call it the 4P model. So you have a process-based digital transformation, and then the business model-based can be called Paisa because it's the way you make money. The domain-based is where all your product-related digital transformation comes, and finally the people-based. So I think most of you would be interested in the product-based. Process-based is a low-hanging fruit. For those who are strong on the legal side and the financial side, you can look at business model-based transformation. And the fourth one is people-based. So we'll look at specific examples for each one. So let's start with business process-based transformation, right? So here I have mentioned process automation as one way of doing it. So what technology immediately comes to your mind? It is RPA, right? Robotic process automation. So I'm sure all of you know what is RPA, robotic process automation. So if you take any business process, for example, opening a bank account, right? So there may be 20 fields that you need to fill in. What is your first name, last name? What is your Aadhaar number? What type of employment do you have, right? All that. So why should a human being do it? So today, if people fill it up online, you can do a verification, validation, and create an account automatically. So that's where commercially available tools for RP are available, and you can automate the process. So let's take a very practical example. This is a very popular company. I will let you guess the company, or I can share it at the end if we are not able to talk. So this is a very popular beverage making, or you can call it an FMCG type of company. This company had three broad objectives for its HR and finance processes. They wanted to seamlessly execute HR processes as an extension of client organization, because usually organizations are very client focused, but this company wanted to have their internal processes also very seamless so that their employees are happy. They wanted to deliver timely and accurate payroll or HR operational processes. So HR and finance are two processes which touch employees very much, right? And they wanted to resolve employee inquiries with a high quality experience. Basically, it's an internal focusing example for digital transformation using robotic process automation. So they spoke to internal SMEs. These are the subject matter experts who own the HR processes. They were very, very manual. They were taking a long time. This was available only 8 hours in a day because people work only for 8 hours. So a lot of questions were asked. They looked at what was the process volume, typically how many queries did they get on a daily basis, what are the process handoffs. That's a big pain when you talk about large corporates. A lot of approvals are required. A lot of handoffs are required from one department to another, or even within one department from one person to another. So all those inefficiencies need to be removed if we are really going for true digital transformation. So at the end of it, this company automated their finance and HR processes. I think there were some 150 HR processes. So what was the business impact because of this? They had a very good improvement in productivity. From an 8-hour day, now you are going to use bots, right? Software bots or RPA. So it became a 24-hour working day. There was no break. These bots don't need a lunch break or a tea break. So with no additional headcount, they were able to take up 8 times more work than what was done manually. So which company is this? It's actually Coca-Cola, right? So this case study I've taken from Blue Prism. Blue Prism is a very popular commercial tool for RPA. So that gives you an idea of one of the opportunities in digital transformation. So robotic process automation, it is basically a service-based entrepreneurship. Large corporates like Infosys are into it. So if any of you are interested in it, just to give you an idea. Here is one more example of an external facing robotic process automation type of improvement for business process transformation. This was one of America's largest drugstore chains. It had approximately 8 million customers, 8 million customer interactions, both online and in-store interactions. And they wanted their people to focus on very high priority items and not focus on these transactions. Most of these transactions were simple, which could be automated, right? So this company followed a 4-step process for RPA. So they first identified transactional and repeatable tasks. So repeatable tasks are very easy to program and automate using RPA. And then they looked at ways to optimize the processes and improve productivity. So when you talk about optimized processes, I spoke about the handoffs that happen, right, from person to person. Some of them may be redundant. They could have been designed some 5 or 10 years back because of a reason which is not valid now. So they removed all those non-value added tasks to optimize the process. And then team members were deployed into higher value work, and artificial intelligence was integrated. So with all this, they were able to improve the bandwidth of their team members, and it allowed the employees to enhance the customer experience. And this company had a 73% improvement in efficiency. So in this case, I'm talking about Walgreens, which is a very popular pharmaceutical chain in the US. So these are two examples of robotic process automation, which is a technology used to bring about business process digital transformation. I'm not saying RPA is the only way, But generally, automation is a broad lever that is used today for business transformation. So here are two examples for you. Now let's come to the business model part of it, right? So these are gradually increasing in complexity as you see. That's why I said RPA or process-based digital transformation is a low-hanging fruit. Now let's come to a business model-based transformation. So these are the four components that are required. You have the customer, the finance part, you have your internal capabilities, and the value proposition. Let's start with customer, right? Customer is a person who gives you money. It could be B2B or B2C. It could be an organization that gives you money. So how you look at your customer, how deep do you know your customer? That's very important. So you can use technology to know your customers better so that you deliver exactly what they're looking for. Next comes finance, right? This is the system that is used to capture your revenue recognition, profit recognition, your cash flow, all that comes under finance. And then when you look at capabilities, what are the resources that are required to deliver value for your customer? And value proposition is a package of all this. What do you deliver to your customer? So let's take a practical example of a business model. How can you change the way you make money? So there is no change in the product here. In business process automation, business process based transformation also, you are not going to change your product. It's just the way you do things. Here, it is the way you collect money from your customers. So let's take a practical example. So here is Maruti Suzuki's subscribe program, right? So we ran a survey recently. So we about 1 or 2 months back, during the peak of COVID-19, on social media, we asked people, if you have to commute to your office every day, what mode of transportation will you choose? So around more than 50% said we'll buy a car. Around 10% said we will hire a cab like Ola or Uber. Maybe now it's down because of social distancing. Another 10% said we'll go for a subscription-based service, and another 20% said they will do carpooling with their friends. Right. So this subscription-based model is a new business model-based transformation. Instead of buying a car on your name, you can sign up with Maruti for a subscription service. So I'll give you the exact numbers here. So let's say you decide to go for a Swift Desire a sedan model. Right? I don't think I've shown it here. So the subscription fees comes to around 20,000 rupees. Right now, what is the other option? They give you different models to pick up from. There are different variations depending on your choice. They will give you a monthly equivalent. And once you pay that money, they take care of all the stuff. Right? You can choose a white plate or a black plate. The car can be on your name or it can be on an intermediary's name. And you pay a basic amount every month, and the car maker is going to take care of maintenance, repair, spare parts, all that stuff. None of the headache is on you. It's a very good model, and it gives you flexibility. You can change your car model after a few months or years. Now the other option, if I want to buy a car in Bangalore, it said ex showroom price comes to around 6.8 lakhs, right? Now, if I were to take a loan to buy this car, the EMI at 13% interest for 4 years comes to some 18,000 rupees. But the subscription service comes to 20,000 rupees. So this 2,000 rupees difference is a premium that you pay for the company to take up all the risk based on the product, right? Some part may malfunction, it may have to be repaired, some parts may have to be replaced. So the OEM takes up the responsibility of all that. So that is a premium that you have to pay. So you pay a subscription-based service of 20,000 rupees instead of an EMI for 18,000 rupees. So how will your cash flow change? So this is how it is going to change. If you look at the x-axis, it is a number of years. So here I have shown 25 years. A car may not have such a long life. It may have 10 years. But these type of models, I'll give you some examples. It's not a very contemporary or new business model. It has been around for more than a century. So x-axis is the number of years and the y-axis is the revenue that you get. Traditionally, there used to be lumpy revenue, right? This Swift Desire would have been sold for some 7 lakh rupees. And then throughout the life of the car, Maruti Suzuki can expect some revenues from what is called the aftermarket segment, right? You take it for service, the dealer will get some money, the OEM will be paid some money, there'll be revenue opportunities from spare parts. But the risk there is that there are spurious spares, right? Somebody else can fake a Maruti spare and sell it in the market, so you lose the opportunity. So this is how a traditional cash flow used to look like. But in a subscription-based model, this is how it changes. So you don't have to pay any money upfront for buying the car. Instead, there is a steady revenue that happens month over month. So here there is much more predictability of revenue. So organizations might like this type of a model. The risk is completely with the OEM. So OEMs need to make sure that they ensure the quality of their products. Their supply chains have to be very efficient for timely supply of spare parts. Their relationship with dealers have to be very important. Dealers have to be trained. So that is why digital transformation comes with a lot of these additional responsibilities. It's not just about technology implementation. That's one thing we always keep insisting, right? Don't go for a technology just for the sake of it. There are so many other associated changes that are required. And the more deeper the digital transformation is, the more effort will be required to make it successful. So this is Maruti Suzuki's example, but like I told you, there are other companies which have been practicing it for a longer time. For example, you can check out Rolls-Royce, right? Rolls-Royce also makes aircraft engines. They have been having a program called Power by the Hour, where airlines don't have to purchase the aircraft engines. Instead, they have to pay them on an hourly basis. And Rolls-Royce will take the complete responsibility for maintaining the uptime of the aircraft engine, supply of spare parts, consumable service, everything rests with Rolls-Royce. One more example I can think of is Xerox, right? Xerox again had this business model where instead of selling their printers and photocopiers, they used to say, take it on a lease for a small amount per month. You can take so many minimum number of printouts. Anything more than that, the customers have to pay on a per page basis. You have taken 50 printouts this month, pay me 50 cents per page or whatever be the amount, right? So this subscription type of business model is not entirely new, but that's where technology helps you today. Today, when you use Internet of Things, it makes sure there is no revenue leakage, right? You can actually know what was the usage of a product. You can use big data and analytics to analyze it, to proactively come out with insights when is a product expected to fail. So you can take timely action before the failure happens, because any downtime is going to hurt your bottom line. So technology helps you to improve, to better implement these type of subscription based models. And so servitization is a new business model. It's a term very popular in manufacturing. For those of you who are interested, you can check that out. So now let's go to the third type of digital transformation, where a company gets into a completely new domain. So let's see if you can guess this example. I'm talking about an e-commerce company which successfully went into a new domain. So in 2000, this company was struggling to scale up its operations. It had very grand dreams and goals to implement its e-commerce business model, first in US and then globally. Unfortunately, its internal systems were not able to deal with the hyper level of growth the management wanted, right? So the management wanted third-party systems to build their applications on top of its shopping sites. Unfortunately, it had very long lead times to develop applications, right? So it needed better infrastructure for its developers so that it could practice agile methods of application development. So it was a 3-year journey for this company. And today they are a market leader in this new technology. So it was an e-commerce company, but this e-commerce company eventually went into cloud-based services, data centers, and all the technologies associated with it. Today, they are a market leader in cloud-based services. They have more than 30% of market share. They untangled the mess with this type of applications by developing well-designed and well-documented APIs, right, so that you could decouple the business logic with the core infrastructure. So you might have by now guessed which company I'm talking about. So I'm talking about Amazon, right? So for those of you who have read the Jeff Bezos story, how he came out of the investment banking industry, started Amazon. It was an e-commerce company initially. Even now, that's its core business. But then it is also popular for its AWS type of service, right? So where is e-commerce? Where is cloud? So here, I'm not talking about diversification, right? So today, companies diversify. They invest in companies which are totally out of their domain. But digital transformation, I'm not talking about diversification here. So Amazon as an e-commerce company felt the need for better IT infrastructure for its core business, which is e-commerce, right? So today you see Amazon has become so popular even in India because of the COVID-19 situation. They were able to scale up very easily across countries. there will be some regional nuances, right? India as a market is different from US, but they were able to take care of those nuances. So they went for a cloud-based IT infrastructure for their core business, and that helped them diversify, and it became a big revenue opportunity. Similarly, I can think of Apple and Google. These type of Silicon Valley companies, which are digitally native companies, have started giving a competition for the automobile companies in Detroit, right? Today, Apple is talking about Project Titan, which is its autonomous car project. Even Google wants to get into autonomous cars because artificial intelligence is the brain that's driving it. So this is one example for domain-based digital transformation. Now let's get into the last part, which is a people-based. So in one big difference between large corporates and startups or small and medium enterprises is scale, right? Large corporates have economies of scale, but unfortunately that drags them down when it comes to agility. They are not able to take quick decisions. They are not nimble when compared to smaller organizations. So how do you balance these two? And like I told you at the beginning of the session, one big challenge for digital transformation is change management. Because usually people who have spent decades in an organization doing things the one particular way, they always have inertia for change. They don't want to change their way of doing things. So this is always a challenge for companies. Do they, let's say they come up with a new digital based business model or a new business unit, do they keep it as part of the parent unit or do they make it a separate unit? So for example, Toyota has a subscription based service. They've created a new brand name called Kinto for it. Toyota's brand name is so popular. Why should they go for a new brand name? So that's a decision they have taken. So a recent survey shows that digital transformation risk is the number one concern for organizations in 2019, and 70% of digital transformation initiatives don't reach their goal. And one main reason here is change management. So I've shown you a Harvard Business Review article which says digital transformation is not about technology. So this is a point of view which this author has taken from his or her experience to show the people side. So that is why I said I will not suggest this transformation to you, because this comes at the end of it. You need to keep it in mind when you plan your digital transformation, but it's completely the softer aspect of managing people, nothing to do with technology here. So we looked at the four ways. Here is one more way of looking at the digital transformation. This was a study conducted by MIT's Sloan B School and Capgemini Consulting. They call it the 9 elements of digital transformation. So broadly, how do you transfer customer experience, your internal operations, and your business model? If you look at customer experience, customer touch point, if you see at the bottom is one example. That was a very interesting one, which I've been observing now. Going back to the Maruti Suzuki example, they have digitized the car buying experience in COVID-19 times. So I think out of 26 touch points, 21 are digitized today. So very few things like test drive, the actual delivery of the car, repair, those are the only touch points where you actually need to visit a dealer shop or a showroom physically. The rest of it, like evaluating the car, looking at it, changing the color of the car, looking at the interiors, all that can be done with just internet connectivity sitting at home. So this is a 3x3 matrix or 9 elements of digital transformation. So you will find many such examples, but the 4 that I showed you are very broadly one way of looking at digital transformation. Like I said, just to give you an idea, because depending on your passion, where your strength lies, what are you interested in as an entrepreneur, depending on that, you can look at it. And it also helps to give you to have the big picture in mind, so that when you approach industry leaders, you have this in mind. How do you ensure scalability of your idea? How is the business model going to change? How is the financial going to change? What will be the acceptance or resistance from the people side? So keeping this big picture in mind also helps you when you talk about industrial digital transformation. So the same study says that the biggest gap in digital transformation is missing skills. 77% of business leaders who participated in this study felt that skill sets are the missing piece. The technology is already there. There are cultural issues, but skill is a big one. So that's where you can play a big role. So this is one more way of looking at digital transformation. If you ask me, is there a maturity model for it? So IDC is a market research company. It has come out with its maturity model, right? So digital transformation is not just about scale, but there are different stages of maturity, starting from ad hoc, right? one manager suddenly gets an idea and he or she implements some transformation. That's ad hoc. It cannot be repeated at all. Opportunistic is when some vendor comes to you or a manager attends a conference, they get an idea, they do some improvement. It is opportunistic. Repeatable is when an improvement or a transformation done in one unit can be done across multiple units. Managed is when it comes with senior management buy-in, and optimized is when it is very well planned. So these are the this is one way of looking at the maturity of digital transformation. And again, this is one definition, but the two important things here are there is always change, and digital technologies are involved to bring about the change. So if you ask me, there are so many roles, how do I know where to go for automation? So this is one framework which we had shared in our book. So if you look at all the roles that are there, you take an industry or an organization, you can look at it in two perspectives. On the x-axis, you have novelty. Novelty is the amount of decisions that are required in a role. And on the y-axis, you see programmability, right? How easy is it to program a job so that it can be represented as a set of rules, right? And where the novelty is low, but the programmability is very high, these are very routine type of jobs. This is very high probability for automation. At the same time, where both novelty and programmability are low, these are craft type of jobs. These are very difficult to automate. You will see craft type of jobs in any industry that you take, whether it's automobile or healthcare. And where both novelty and programmability are high, these are professional technology jobs. Artificial intelligence is slowly getting into this field. For example, you can do diabetic retinopathy using a mobile app. So Google has developed an app which has been approved by FDA. By just taking a photograph of your retina with a mobile app, it can tell you what is the risk of diabetic retinopathy for you. X-ray scans, MRI scans today are analyzed using artificial intelligence. And finally, non-routine jobs are immune to AI. These are scientist type of jobs where they have to take a decision on a day-to-day basis. So if you look at digital transformation, you can decide where you want to play. The two boxes are the routine technology and professional technology, where the amount of programmability is very high. So if novelty is low, you can look at technologies like RPA to automate it. And where the novelty is high, artificial intelligence can help you. It can keep self-learning. You need to train it initially based on how humans did a process, and then it can learn on its own. It may still face some situations it has not seen before. Those can be transferred to humans to take a decision. So this is a broad framework to decide where digital transformation can apply. So where do you draw the line? Because in a way, digital transformation is, there is some hype around it, right? It's a very commonly used term. At the same time, continuous improvement has always been there in organizations. So these are just some points for you to help you think big, right? Don't limit yourself. For example, if you look at continuous improvement, that could be some incremental improvement in revenue. That could be an incremental reduction in cost. All that will fall under continuous improvement. When you talk about digital transformation, look at new revenue streams that are technology driven. Continuous improvement is usually bottom up initiative from somebody's idea. But digital transformation, if it has to be scalable, is top down with senior management buy in. So these are some points for you to think about where to draw the line between continuous improvement and digital transformation. Don't limit yourself. Aim high, think high, so that you go for impactful changes in the way businesses are run, or how you run your business. So this is an estimate on what is the market size for industrial digital transformation. You will see multiple estimates, but the point I wanted to give you was it's more than a trillion billion business by 2025. It is expected to grow at a CAGR of 16.5%. These are just numbers, but the main takeaway for you here is that it's a big market out there. Large corporates are still struggling to implement digital transformation on a large scale. It's not just about the technology, but a lot of other support is required. So that's where entrepreneurs and smaller enterprises who are experts in niche areas can help large corporates to successfully implement digital transformation. So with that, I will end my session. I hope I have not taken too much time.
So that was a very good session, no doubt, Ram. So quickly, let's take up the questions. So I would request the participants to raise chance to ask your questions, or you can even put your questions in the chat box. So meanwhile, maybe before that, I have a few questions, Ram. Maybe I'll take that first. So yes, I was listening to you. So many of my thoughts was already discussed by you. See, from Forge, we see many startups are coming out with a lot of IDT technologies. But then the problem comes here when it gets commercialized. When you talked about the culture, the companies adopting to that, all of these are becoming a big challenge for the startups again when it comes to commercialization. So addressing that, what's your opinion on how do we face this challenge on culture, cost, management, and taking it to the industry, convincing people on this, that it'll bring profit to them, or it'll bring down their cost, or whatever it is. So your views on that.
Sure, Nalini. So I don't have an answer for the people part, right? So people part is mainly for the business their own leaders and their HR leaders, right? They need to build the trust that this technology is being brought over not to take away jobs, it's for the betterment of the company. So I will not get into the culture part, but on your commercial part, that's where having the big picture helps. You need to make sure all elements are taken care, right? It's not just a technology part. There is cost involved to bring about any transformation. So having a 360-degree perspective will make sure that you don't miss any aspect. Because one problem with these transformation projects is the cost overrun, right? The budget overrun. You plan for X amount of dollars, eventually it becomes 2X or 3X. So in order to avoid that, you need to make sure you think of it from all perspectives, not just the technology part. What is going to be the infrastructure part? What is the services part? So having an all-round perspective is one way I can think of to make sure you get the commercials right? And be authentic, be upfront with risk management. What are the risks that you foresee? How can you mitigate those risks? Because any technology product, it's very difficult to get the cost estimate right. There is always going to be an overrun, but upfront, if you have been authentic with your clients, I think they will appreciate that.
And one more question to add that we were actually doing some research to understand the MSME, getting into the IDT space and their mindsets on that. Coimbatore being a lot of MSMEs on foundries and motors. Still people are talking about Industry 4.0 and technologies, but then the mindset change on adopting it is we see it's very, very minimal. We were also thinking, should we have an education part of it so that people will understand why it is important for them and how do they forecast the change will benefit them. So your views on approaching IDT to MSMEs, a few thoughts on that.
Sure. Yeah. So I think Industry 4.0 is definitely applicable for MSMEs also. It starts with awareness, right? Probably there is lack of awareness, thinking that it's only for large corporates. There is too much investment involved. I think we need to create the awareness that it is a journey and it need not be a large, big technology implementation just for the sake of it. So one way of bringing about awareness is by using more case studies and examples. In fact, just during the lunch break, I shared an example on LinkedIn. There is a Siemens implementation in some factory in Maharashtra where they were able to improve the number of products that are manufactured in an assembly line. So you can check out that example. So as more and more local examples closer to home get implemented, I think the trust part will come, right? So awareness and trust is what I would suggest.
So that's great. I have two questions in the Q&A. Let me take that. So this is from Professor Tiruvali from Kumaraguru. So what are your thoughts on the role of digital transformation for education sector?
Yeah, it's a very good question. So education sector is in its prime stage for digital transformation. In fact, Professor Christensen in Harvard Business School, right? He was a professor who coined the term digital disruption or innovative disruption. So he had a prophecy. He said that 50% of US universities will go bankrupt in 10 years or 15 years. He said that even before COVID-19, now it's turning out to be true. So there is a lot of democratization happening in education. So MOOCs platforms are becoming very, very popular. So thoughts on role of digital transformation for education sector? Yes, Education sector is also going to be transformed. So many people are talking about hybrid as a method of delivering education going forward. It's going to be a mix of digital delivery and physical classroom training. I think those days of complete classroom training are gone because COVID-19 has taught this lesson from kindergarten to PhD classes can be delivered online. And so I think it's going to be a hybrid model going forward.
So COVID gave the advantage of taking it to people quickly. I think it's exponential now. So I have another question from Harshavardhan. Yeah. So how can a local business, he meant the small shops, go digital transformation? Yeah. So I think more of the Kirana kind of store. I think that's he's talking about.
So my first point will be is no organization should go for digital transformation just for the sake of it, right? So when you talk about a small shop, do some study like one of the speakers in the morning said, right? Spend time with them. What are the challenges they face? What are the business opportunities? Are they looking for growth? How much of risk appetite do you have? So your idea for digital transformation for small shops should depend on that. And we cannot take some big presentation and share it to them and say, adopt this technology, right? Just for the sake of it. So understanding their pain points, understanding the business opportunities for them would be like the Amazon example I gave, right? Maybe they can get into some associated areas or new product lines or new revenue streams. So thinking in those lines, don't jump to the technology initially. Think about these challenges before you talk about digital transformation. So it is definitely applicable for small shops also, but then it really depends on how applicable your idea is.
I think we don't have any more questions. Anything from audience? If you could, if you want to interact with Ram, you can raise your hands. We'll unmute you for the discussion. Before I get the questions on, Ram, see, we are also looking at, since you know that we have a lot of students here who's taking up the course on innovation and technology. So as a curriculum, what is your insights on what is that any graduate has to, equip themselves to meet the industry requirement? Because tomorrow, assume that a lot of industries are getting into the IDT space and things are changing all around them. So what should be the preparedness from students, who's graduating to work in such organization in the IDT space?
So how should the curriculum be changed to help students?
Exactly. So one is the curriculum part of it, and one is the their self-learning part of it. So how the curriculums are being designed, but then individually how they have to get prepared to meet the industry requirement.
Sure, Nalini. So my take on it is, I don't think it's possible to teach industrial digital transformation in classes as subjects, right? I think that's where the practical exposure helps. We need to lay importance on students spending time, internships, summer vacation projects. This spending time with industry, whatever be their industry of interest, right? I think that's where will be the eye opener for students because they have the basic foundation with all these technologies. Like I keep saying, don't implement the technologies just for the sake of it. So spending time with the industry is what I think will make a big difference. Instead of just making it a classroom type of thing, let them get more practical exposure. So let them interact with the industry. They can talk in the language of the industry. Then they can look at mapping of technologies to address practical and realistic business problems. That will be my suggestion.
Yes, I think the T layer, they have to start exploring with the domain knowledge. So we're on time. I think Mira's here. You want to discuss anything? Okay. So Ram, that was a wonderful session taking from Coke to Maruti or whatever it is. You could, not only the theory, you could able to sensitize them with a lot of examples. So thank you for that. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.